Welcome to Confessions of a Parent Coach. I'm Coach, a mother of four, and potty talker, Ann Kaplan. This is the podcast where I confess something from my own parenting and coaching life, teach a lesson around it, and answer your questions. Even we parenting experts are far from perfect, and the real magic happens when we get down with all that imperfection. We get into the gritty side of parenting here, so earbud up and dive in. Hey, everybody, welcome into another episode of the podcast. What is up, podcast listeners? I'm so excited to be with you today. I realized recently, looking back over the first, I think today's episode is in the almost 20s-ish. And I was looking back at all of the podcast episodes I've recorded over the last couple of months because I'm sending out emails saying, oh, check this podcast out for this information. Here's where I discuss X, Y, and Z. And I realize that I start every single flippin' podcast the exact same way. I would say, I'm so excited to be here with you today. But I've decided not to stress about it. I'm just going to allow myself to just have that as my signature catchphrase. Very unoriginal, but that's just what comes out of my mouth when I start recording. So excited to be here with you guys today. And it is true. I actually do get quite excited about the topics that we discuss on the podcast and just the feeling of connecting with parents who are looking to up-level their parenting skills, their relationships with their kids, energy in their home. Those are my people. That's me. That's who I am too. And so it's not a lie to say that I am excited to be with you. So what we're going to talk about today is literally the number one tip. I always say, oh, here's a tip on this, or the number one tip for this, the number one tip for that. But I want you to also know that when I say that, I'm not just blowing smoke up your ass. It is really true. We're going to talk about, and this really is, the number one tip that I give to my clients when they are very first starting out working with me. So when you start working with me, whether you're working with me in my group program or working together one-on-one, or I'm working with you and your partner at the same time, no matter how you work with me, you will be getting a curriculum from me, a self-paced course that has both a ton of amazing parenting skills and super, super specific stuff like how to deal with sibling dynamics, how to make a customized consequence list for each one of your children, how do we do chores, how do we respond to tantrums, all that great stuff, plus lots and lots of mindset tools. So you're going to be doing, I basically trick you into journaling because everybody knows that journaling is good for you. Also, everyone resists journaling. Even me, I've been doing it for years and I still am like, I guess I don't really need to do it today, which is not true. I always need to do it. So I trick you into journaling. So in addition to all those parenting skills that you learned from me in that course, you also are getting tricked into journaling because a huge part of the work that we do is mindset work. So when you start working with me, I'll always tell you, like, just start with module 1. And even module 1 has a lot of stuff in it and it can feel really overwhelming. And it's not just because you've gotten a lot of stuff from me all at once. It's because your life feels like there's a lot of stuff to deal with all at once, right? Like the listener question that you're going to get today is such a great example of that. But it is so normal to hear from my new clients like, okay, well, my kid is lying. I also want them to clean their room. They're not doing chores. They're being super disrespectful. They're misbehaving in school. They leave their stuff everywhere. They're hitting their sister. Like, and I want to fix it all right away, right? So I am going to give you the number one tip that I share with my clients when they very first get all this stuff. They get this massive download for me. And then, their eyes are as big as saucers. It's the deer in the headlights, analysis paralysis situation. How do we work through that? I'm going to talk to you about that today. And this is a tip that whether you're working with me or not, you can absolutely implement the second you're done listening to this podcast, and it will make a very big difference for you and your kid. And as always, got to start us off with a confession. It's time for me to step into the confessional. And my confession is that, well, first of all, I am guilty, and especially in my early days as a parent, was very guilty of this exact thing of like, oh my God, I have everything to fix. And how that would look for me was because I was a new mom. So how much stuff did I really have to fix? I hadn't messed it up yet, right? I was just getting started. But instead of I have all this stuff to fix, what I would do to myself is like, I have this standard to fill. I know exactly the parent I want to be. I want to be the kind of parent who never loses her temper. The house is well organized, not like a total disaster. My kid is a good listener. We don't fight. This kid listens the first time I talk. We also sleep through the night. We take great naps. We have good manners. We eat healthy foods. We don't, eat TV dinners. When I pack my kids' lunch for preschool, there's no like whatever Lunchables in there or something. Like it was a real specific list of this is the parent I want to be. That's so much stuff. And when anything would not be perfect, like if I did wind up, oh, screw it, I guess we're just going to order takeout tonight, or oh my gosh, I just yelled at my kid, or whatever, I would really beat myself up. And that is, I think, a really common trait. So if you're out there right now thinking like, yeah, I resemble that, I want you to know I feel you and that you're super normal. I think, especially when we're first starting out parenting, we just come into it with this idea of what we want it to look like. It's not really based on anything. It's not really based on reality. It's probably based a little bit on reaction to our personal experience growing up, but we don't even know what we don't know, right? So it's really, really easy to have this like picture perfect idea and to feel really defeated and like failures when that, image does not come to fruition. So I hope that if you're out there listening to this, you're not beating yourself up, but if you are, that that you're not alone. And so the kind of little example I want to give you of me beating myself up, my friends actually just still, because I've got this kind of core group of girlfriends that I've known since graduate school, like super, super close friends, and they've known me since before I was even married and all this stuff. And I sometimes think I should really have one of those girls come on this podcast and, you can hear it straight from the horse's mouth, like all the growth I've done, all the changes I've done, all the work I've done over the years. But still, when we get together, I still get this thrown in my face. So this isn't necessarily about parenting, but I want you to give yourself permission to expand this into all areas of my life. So this little core group of friends, we are in a book club. We still are in a book club together, and we were in a book club in grad school, and we take turns hosting and all that stuff. Well, I was hosting. It was my turn to host, and I was working at the time out of the house. And so I was like kind of trying to do the math, like, okay, what do I all need to do so that I'm ready when the girls come over tonight? And what does that mean in terms of like what time I need to leave work and all that stuff? And so I literally wrote down a list of every single thing I had to do. And when I say every single thing, I don't mean just like make dinner, vacuum, or clean house or whatever. It was like brush hair, put on makeup, you know, take shower, put on lotion, like every single piece of getting ready, like cut vegetables, create salad dressing, like all of the minutia of getting ready. And then with each thing, I would figure out how much time that would take. So I could add it all up and do the math of when I needed to go to leave work a little bit early so I'd be on time. The part that everybody just got fixated on wasn't how insane I was about, planning all this stuff out so meticulously. It was how I calculated the time, because I was trying to calculate how many hours. So if something was like going to take me 20 minutes, I wouldn't write 20 minutes down. I would literally write 0.3 hours or whatever. And so and I had this all written down on a little Post-it note. And I came home, I got ready, and stupid me, I forgot to throw away the Post-it note. So when all my girlfriends came over, they saw this Post-it note, and that was basically like the topic of conversation for the first like hour of book club, was just what a cuckoo's nest I was. And that's how I lived at that time. And even though I have come a long way and I don't do, I don't really micromanage my life or my kids. And that's the huge segue here, all joking aside. That little kind of like perfectionist, beat yourself up person is still inside of me, 100% for sure. And that little beat myself up perfectionist person is the part of me that gets super overwhelmed when there's just a lot of stuff or a lot of stuff going wrong. So even today, just literally today, this morning, if you're watching the video, you can see that I'm recording from a new location. It's because we are in our summer place. We live in this house in northern Michigan in the summer that has belonged to my family forever. And it used to be my grandmother's house and all that stuff. Well, one of the things that happens every summer, tons of people come to visit, and there are so many little pieces of the puzzle that are, that need to get taken care of to accommodate all the various different family groups that are coming and all that stuff. And this morning, that little perfectionist part of me really took the reins because there's one bed in one bedroom that's not working right now. And I try to figure out if we can have it fixed by the time everybody arrives and blah, blah, blah. And I just start beating myself up, right? And it's not just because of this one bed. Like, I'm a pretty good problem solver, and this is not like rocket science. It's all the things like, oh my gosh, I've got to go to Costco. Oh my gosh, I have to clean the house. Oh my gosh, the beds. Oh my gosh, this. Oh my gosh, that. And pretty soon it's just like everything's a disaster. And then what do? Kind of nothing, honestly. And that is exactly the segue into what we're talking about today. So this one tip that I was about to tell you of what to do when you very first start doing this work, the advice I have for you is simple. Just pick one thing. Just pick one thing. You are going to be on a consultation with me, or you're going to be in your first coaching call with me, and you are going to have the world's longest list of stuff that needs to get addressed. And I am going to tell you this exact thing with these exact words. Just pick one thing. Because I know that if you try to solve all the problems all at once, we all come into this work thinking, maybe we don't consciously think this. Probably consciously we think the opposite of this, but we think like, I'm going to sign up and work with Anne. I'm going to learn all these great parenting tips. And, just like that, with the wave of the wand, I'm going to turn into Mary Poppins overnight. Or with my dad clients, I say Harry Poppins. You're not going to turn into Harry Poppins overnight or Mary Poppins overnight. So give yourself permission to just pick one thing. So what I do, what that really looks like when I do with my clients is say, okay, we're just going to work on one thing this month. And you know what? Even though that whole first module of this coursework might feel overwhelming to you, if you notice, this is what I say to my clients, if you notice, you're really only learning one parenting skill, which is taking space. It's the most important parenting skill. It's the skill that is the simplest, but the hardest. So remember that simple doesn't mean easy. Taking space, that's your number one, very first parenting skill. And now, okay, great. You only have to learn one thing this whole month. Now let's even make that more simple by saying, and you're only going to apply it to one parenting problem. So then we spend our session thinking about, okay, well, what parenting problem would that be? What is one thing in your life right now? And I encourage you to ask yourself this question. What is one thing in your life right now that if you could get a handle on just this one thing, it would make a big difference to you? And with every family, that's different. Some families, of course, it depends on the age of the child often, right? But for some families, it's just if I could just get us out the door on time in the mornings, or if I could just stop the hitting, if I could just get a handle on these tantrums, if I could just stop losing my temper, if I could, if I could just figure out what to say when my kid comes home screaming about a bully or crying, if I could just deal with the letters home from the school or whatever, right? Just one thing. Pick just one thing. Give yourself permission that you're only going to use one. You're going to pick one thing and you're going to use one parenting skill for that thing. And you're just going to get very, very good at using that skill. That becomes your knee jerk, like intuitive response. Whenever this problem arises, you are going to use this new tool that's in your toolkit and trust, and this will happen. Trust that as you manage and onboard this new skill, as it becomes more rote to you, as it becomes more second nature to you, you won't have to decide now to apply it to a new parenting dilemma. That will naturally happen. Your skill will snowball. And pretty soon you are going to be using it for, oh, I was using it just for the mornings times, but now I'm using it at bedtime too. Or, oh my gosh, I didn't even realize that this same exact catchphrase just fell out of my mouth when we were at the playground today. And I've only really been using it around dinner. It's gonna happen. So give yourself permission to just pick one thing, because that overwhelm, oh my God, everything's going wrong. Oh my God, everything has to be perfect. Oh my God, I have to do X, Y, and Z, and I have to turn into Mary Poppins overnight. That is exactly why I absolutely always, even after years and years of doing this work and learning all of these amazing ways of helping parents not get stuck, I always have a handful of clients who are just kind of spinning their wheels, especially in the very beginning. We get defeated. We feel like things aren't working. We feel like, oh, well, I tried it and it didn't work. So then we start trying something new. So we're not being consistent. Like, oh, that happens to all of us. And a lot of that comes from overwhelm. If you give yourself permission to say, like, you know what? It's totally fine that everything's, a complete shit show at bedtime, because I already decided I'm not working on bedtime right now. I'm working on breakfast, or I'm working on homework, or I'm working on blah, whatever it is. If you give yourself that permission, when you see things that are off track that you haven't gotten to yet, you will be able to accept that those things are still there. They are waiting for you. They will be there for you when you get to them, but you don't need to address them right now. Just the same as me getting ready for all these crazy family reunions that are happening this summer. I have a million things to do. And when I give myself permission to only focus on one thing, today I'm going to deal with this furniture bed situation. That's it. I'm still going to have these thoughts come into my mind of like, yeah, but you also still need to buy like 10 tons of toilet paper. I can say to myself, like, yes, and that need to buy toilet paper will be there for me when I am ready for it. But it's totally cool that it's not taken care of yet, because that's not what I'm doing right now. I'm doing something else right now. Give yourself permission to just focus on one thing. I hope that is helpful for you, which is another catchphrase I've realized I say almost every single episode. And today, just like always, I'm answering a listener question, and you're going to see right away how this fits into this whole just pick one thing. And this is from an anonymous listener. So remember that you could always get your questions answered by me anonymously if you want to. Just let me know that you want to remain anonymous, and I will make sure to respect your wishes. So, anonymous member says, looking for advice on how to handle my 5-year-old boy's impulsive behavior at school, hitting, kicking kids. I'm kind of synopsizing here because it's quite a long thing. I have grounded him. I've taken special privileges away. Nothing is working to make this stop. He's being labeled as a bad kid. I've tried to teach him values by giving him chores at home so he can earn money. We struggled with bringing home his school stuff. Lately, he's been great about bringing home all of his things, and I go through his bag and let him know I'm proud of him. But now he's showing signs of ADD, and medication is not an option, even though his teacher agrees that she does seem a form of ADHD in him. He's full of energy. He doesn't sit still. He tells fibs at school. He tries to be sneaky. When he got home one day, I love this. When he got home one day, I timed him, and in 35 minutes, he attempted to do 5 to 6 different things. We have a bedtime for him at 8 p.m. and he's up by 7 a.m. We have a solid routine. Discipline and routine are not the same in the two households that he grows up in. So I'm not even going to keep going with this, not because I, have any, criticism or judgment on this question, but I hope you are listening, listener, because as we've talked today, you can see how this mama is spiraling, and who can blame her, because she sees all of the things that might be off kilter. Okay, there's a disparity between the homes. He's fibbing, he's sneaky, he forgets his stuff at school, he might have ADHD, he's being impulsive, he's getting labeled as a bad kid. And now we're kind of thinking like, okay, well, where do we start? Because at this point, like there are way too many holes in this dam to plug them all up simultaneously. It's not possible. So that gets back to the just pick one thing. What is one thing that you could get a handle on? And this, I love this question because it also illustrates the dilemma we have in picking one thing. Because remember how this mama started her question, what to do about my child's impulsive behavior. So her gut is telling her that all of these mistakes that this kiddo is making right now, they stem from the same place, impulsivity. So if I could just get a handle on this impulsivity, that would be great. Well, here's where, if we're working together in a coaching relationship, I'm going to help you get more specific, because it's not that you're wrong. It absolutely, impulsivity. Well, first of all, the impulsivity is the hallmark of a 5-year-old, especially a 5-year-old boy. So you're 100% spot on that this is kind of the root or a place that all of this stuff blossoms from. And impulsivity itself is not something we can change or fix if we're coming at it from that mindset of like, I'm going to fix this kid's impulsivity. Think about what our job is as parents, is to give kids the response to their mistakes, their choices that help them decide in the future to possibly make a different choice. It helps them evaluate their choice, essentially. So if we're saying like this kid's quote unquote misbehavior is he's impulsive, well, no, what we're accidentally saying when we look at it that way is this child has a personality trait of impulsivity. Now, like I said, 5-year-olds are impulsive. So when we say it's a personality trait, does not mean it's going to be a forever personality trait, but the version of this child that we are presented with in this present moment is impulsive. That's one of the descriptors or characteristics of this child. That's not a misbehavior. That's like saying you're naughty for having brown hair, you're naughty for being creative, you're naughty for being, you know, needy or snuggly or rebellious or whatever. Those are all personality traits. They're not mistakes. Impulsivity is a personality trait. It is not a mistake. So now we can look at, okay, I have this compassionate perspective. I have this understanding of why my child makes the mistakes he makes, because he is dealing with impulsivity right now. That's fabulous, because that gives you that compassion piece, which is a massive part of how we need to be responding to kids' behavior if we're going to be effective. We have to bring compassion to the forefront. And because you have an understanding of what's behind his behavior, you have an access point to that compassion that sometimes we lack when we don't understand the why. Why is this behavior happening? Oh, it's because my kid's impulsive. He's a 5-year-old boy. He's impulsive. Okay, great. But also, and you may have already heard me say this many times on the podcast, just because a behavior is understandable doesn't mean it's excusable. So then we look at, okay, what are the behaviors? And this mama has listed several: fibbing, sneakiness, not bringing his stuff home from school, being impulsive at school and aggressive, sounds like physically aggressive at school, she's getting letters home from school and all that stuff. Those are the behaviors I want you to look at when I say just pick one thing. And I don't know the answer for this particular mom in terms of what her one thing would be. My guess is the aggression at school, just because that's what she led with. And as I read through the rest of her post, or sorry, her question, she mentions again his behavior at school. So I would say that's probably your one thing to fix or work on. And then the other thing that I would say that's, beyond the scope of today's episode, but very important here, that I see in this question is a lot of pivoting. We tried this, it didn't work. We tried that, it didn't work. I tried later on in her question, she says, when I picked him up on Sunday, I talked about his behavior and what needs to change, but I couldn't discipline because it's been 2 days. So there's a lot of like discipline skills here that I think we could tighten up for sure. Like, for example, you absolutely can discipline your kiddo 2 days. Once they're old enough, they can absolutely have delayed consequences. So you could totally discipline them 2 days later if you needed to. But the other piece in this puzzle is like trying to talk about his behavior is, we have already talked about this on the podcast, right? Talking doesn't teach. So just pick one thing doesn't mean only just pick one behavior you want to improve. It also means just pick one discipline strategy and commit to it for a very long time. Like I'm talking like 2 weeks minimum. And then we can evaluate if that's effective or not and all that stuff. Now, obviously, if you're working with me, I'll be present with you through those 2 weeks to evaluate. You might say, okay, I did this thing that we committed to. I'm using the, taking space technique. Here's what I did. And I might give you feedback and say, oh, okay, that's great. Next time I want you to do this, and that's going to make it even more effective, all that stuff. So you're committing to this approach the whole time, but you're also improving and iterating that approach. So once again, my catchphrase, I hope that's helpful. I hope it's helpful for you to give yourself permission to just pick one thing, pick one behavior and one discipline approach, and give yourself permission to, well, first of all, not be very good at it at first. So it's going to take a while for you to be good at it, and it's going to take a while for it to work, and that's not a problem. And trust that all the other things will fall into place when you're ready for them, instead of you giving yourself the job of doing all things at once at all times. It's not possible. And if I could go back in time to that 20-something version of me, I would have really given myself that bitch slap a lot sooner than life did. I hope you're having a great rest of your day. I hope you enjoy the rest of your week. I hope you implement this concept immediately in your family. And if you want to get your question answered, all you have to do is send it to me. Go to my website, AnnKaplanParentCoach.com, and just use that contact form and send me your question. I will answer it on the podcast. I'm actively recruiting question askers and collecting questions all the time. And if you know for sure you want to get some of this goodness in your life one-on-one, meaning you want to actually sit and pick my brain and tell me about your family and your challenges, set up a free discovery call. I don't know why you wouldn't. It's free. It's an hour and a half for us to sit down and talk honestly and directly about what's going on in your family. I will ask you tons and tons of questions and do such a great job listening to you. So through that first part of our time together, I create a very comprehensive picture about what's going on in your family, what you're up against, how you feel, how you've tried to work on it so far, what you've done that's worked, what hasn't worked, all of that stuff, so that I can use the second half of our time together to give you my direct, honest feedback and so much love. And we will end our session knowing exactly what you're going to do next to turn things around in your family. These discovery calls are huge. They're incredibly valuable. I hear all the time from people like, oh my gosh, I've already learned so much. And this is just like the free call. So if you know that you're ready for that, if you know that you're ready to do this work and you don't want to do it alone, I am here for you. The link to set up that call is in the show notes, and I will talk to you again soon. Bye, everybody. The episode is over, but there's more waiting for you. You can grab my free workbook, Getting Kids to Listen the First Time, that walks you through the fundamental principles I teach all of my clients and applies them to this very universal parenting challenge. So if you're sick of repeating yourself all day long or just want to learn more about my style, you'll definitely want to go to bit.ly/kidswholisten. And if you're ready to work with me, let's meet. Set up a free call at bit.ly/KaplanCall, and let's create an action plan that gets you exactly where you want to go. And of course, links to all this goodness are in the show notes. Thanks for joining, and I'll see you next time.